In this video, we will discuss my blocks, which are essentially functions, in Scratch. Now, the cool thing about functions are you just take a set of instructions and then you just reuse the block over and over again, or when necessary. For example, this is a set of instructions. Recall that what if we want to change the royalty rate? As stated before, these are instructions. So for example, let's do something else. So let's say we want to ask this question 2 times or 3 times. We can use this block right here. And this will repeat the question 2 times. Now there are other controls that will alter the flow of the program. So we could use forever, and essentially this one will run forever until you hit the stop button. But let's get back to the my blocks. These are just, each block is a set or is an instruction, whereas a set of blocks are instructions. Instead of typing when blank is clicked or when green flag click, we will create our own block. So currently I like what we have here, but there's another way to do it. So I'm going to copy or duplicate the purple one. So, but we have to change this then, the answer, because answer isn't connected anymore. It will only use the last value. So let's get rid of the forever block and the repeat block. So let's go to the my blocks and you just go to make a block. Actually, let me leave answer in there for now. So you go to my blocks and you go to make a block. You can have a block and you give it a name. So we'll call it streaming calculator, or better yet, music streaming calculator. Okay, so let's call this music streaming calculator version 1. And you just hit OK. Now you could add input, which we'll do in our second example. So we have a block called make streaming, called music streaming calculator version 1. So now we have to define what it does. So essentially we could put this here, but we would have to also insert this one as well. Once you define a function, you can just put it right here and then add when clicked. And when we click on this right here, it will execute what's in here. So let me stop it. So it's like a definition. area of a rectangle is equal to length times width. What's up with a function or a block that you create? It could be extensively detailed or very long. So as you see, when you test music streaming calculator V1, it executes. So if we say 400, we should get 1. And we get $1 as a royalty payout. So let's stop it. All right, this is one way to do it. But before I move on to the next example, when you click here, music streaming calculator V1, it will execute this, the definition you created. So if we type in 400, we should get 1. $1 is the payout. And then we stop it. So let's, now this is one way to do it, but there's a more efficient way to do it by using parameters. So they just call it input, but let's create another block. And let's drag this down here and drag this part down here. Okay, so let's go to make a block. So we'll call this one music streaming calculator. Music streaming calculator V2. But we want to add input. This will be number of streams. Now we could add another input and call it royalty rate in case the royalty rate changes. But in this situation, in version 2, we won't do that. We'll just use number of streams. So music streaming calculator version 2, number of streams. So this is going to be a private variable for this function. So let's see how it works. If you look up here to the left, one of the neat things you could do is you can use the number of streams. So hopefully you see where I'm going with this. So really all we need is say, this one. So we use say with this combination of blocks, you will get the wrong answer if you insert, for example, if you say 5, it says $1 when in actuality it should be not exactly $1. So let's try 400. Notice that the answer block is used in our function. Therefore, the answer will always be $1. If you recall from earlier, you can drag out number of streams and we won't need answer. So we don't have to do the ask part. So you will just insert the value. So let's say it's 4,000 and it should be $10. As you can see over here, $10 is the royalty payout. Let's try that again. $10 is the royalty payout. These are private variables of the function. So another example would be if you wanted to change the royalty rate. So let's say you want to change it to 0.33 or 0.0033. Well, before we do that, let's do a few more examples with music streaming calculator. Let's try 8,000 and you get $20. Let's try 16,000. And, oh, something went wrong. Oh, $40. I did not give Scratch enough time to, to do the 7 seconds. That's why $20 was showed up twice. So let's try 160,000. Could that be 400? 400 is the royalty payout. So taking number of strings, this is 16,000. Take number of strings and you multiply it by 0.0025. Now we'll do one more example. So let's move this down further. So we go to make a block, and we'll call this function, our block, music streaming calculator version 3. And we'll add 2 inputs. So the first input will be number of streams, and the next one will be royalty rate. Okay, in this example, we have number of streams and royalty rate. Now, what if, let's look at the other example. Number of streams and royalty rate. So this number of streams will not conflict with this number of streams because it's a private variable of its function or its block. So let's just duplicate what we have for from the previous example. We need number of streams, and let's get rid of this answer. And we need the royalty rate. If you multiply, or if you click on, let's try, so this is music streaming calculator v3 block or function. Let's say you have 6 million streams. Or in fact, how about 60 million streams? Okay, 60 million streams. Now I accidentally clicked on this, so you may have seen the answer. And you should get 0. That's because we did not initialize or did not provide a value for royalty rate. So the royalty rate we've been using is 0.0025. Now when we click on this function or block, you get 150,000. Let's click on that one more time. You get 150,000 as the royalty payout. But what if the royalty rate changed and went up? Let's try 0.0075. Let's try this value. This is higher than the previous. You get 450,000 is the royalty payout. So the main thing to remember about functions is the parameters, such as number of streams and royalty rates, are private variables of the function in most cases, or in the majority of cases. Now, could you manipulate the output? All right, so let's do 860 million at 0.0075. And this is the answer. 6,450,000 is the royalty payout. So there's a lot going on, but remember, keep your functions or blocks simple starting out. And then eventually graduate to using parameters. As you can see, we went from version 1, which is right here, where it asks how many music streams occurred. And then we went straight to a smaller script where you just include the value right here. 160,000 streams is equal to 400 at the 0.0025 rate. And then let's change the music calculator version 3 music streaming calculator back to the other value, the value we've been using, 00 or 0.0025, and let's change it to 800 million, which we've seen numerous times. And you get 2 million as the royalty payment. Now, could you connect these functions together? Sure. Does it make sense? Maybe if you get rid of this one. But let's click on these two, version 3 and version 2. Version 1 is okay. It's going to ask a question. So 200,000 is the royalty payout for 800 million. And then 400 is the royalty payout for 660,000. Also, you could, let's have a ladder effect where we use the same function over and over again. So for this example, we'll use version 2. Version 2, version 2. So remember, this is version 2 right here. And let's shorten the time to 4 seconds. But what we'll do is we'll go from 4 to 40 to 400 to 4,000 just to see the chaining effect. So the first one should be a penny, or should I do it for 3 seconds? Let's do 3 seconds. And observe over here when we hit the green flag. A penny is the royalty payout, 10 cents is the royalty payout, $1 is the royalty payout, and $10 is the royalty payout. So we did 4 values. Now you can even do something extra, such as adding the ability to comment. So, for example, you could drag over and put, for example, you can ask a question like, what do you think? And then it will pause in between each one if we do this multiple times. So I duplicate this 3 times, or yeah, 3 times. You just put in, and then you would have to use the answer, but then you have to say something afterwards. So, for example, you could use the look, and then you could use say or something else. Or better yet, you could say something like, do you want to stop? Or proceed. Okay, so far, nothing will happen. And this is just extra. It will stop and it will not really do anything. For example, what do you want to stop? Maybe say stop. Nothing happens. It just continues on. If you say stop. But there are ways to control the flow of the program. But that moves into control. For example, you can do a loop and get rid of a few values. There's quite a few ways to do this. So this video is becoming a little long. So if you wanted to play around and stop the program, let's just keep it simple. So you have this, if then, do this, and then you go to the operators, use one of the following shapes. So we'll just use equal to. If you want to proceed, and then you put answer here, if answer is equal to proceed. If answer is equal to proceed, let's see what happens. We will run an example where we type in stop. So essentially what this code says is, if the answer is proceed, then do this. So it will continue on. So let's run the program where we type in stop. Or really, if you type in anything beside proceed, let's see, proceed. So we type in proceed, it proceeded. But, and I'll just stop. Let's say we don't want this there. So, if we type in anything besides proceed, it should stop. And as you see, it stops. But with this example, or when we run it again, and we type in proceed, the answer is equal to proceed, and it will run, it will show the next payout, which is right here. And that definitely concludes this video. To learn more about Scratch, you can watch videos on YouTube, but if you want to see quirky calculators or things applicable to music, uh, consider potentially subscribing to this YouTube channel. Also, there is a series on music streaming calculators with JavaScript. So if you want to dig deeper, you can find the series here